Hey there, what's the time? Well, I'm glad you're early for class. Keep this up, huh? It's actually quite important to be early. Why? Well, being early, of course, is a sign of respect, but more importantly, if you're the chair of this class, you might need some time to prepare. Do you have a video you want to show? Do you have a Kahoot that you want to set up? Being there 5 or 10 minutes earlier might quite help you to do that. In general, even though in this video we're going to be teaching you how to run a classroom as a chair, there's a few things that need to happen before going into the classroom. Time management, as we said, is the most important one. Not just being there early, but also knowing what kind of time management you're going to have in the classroom itself. Go back to the lesson plan that we created together. See the learning goals, maybe the activities that you have set up. Next to them, write a number of minutes that you think they're going to take. An approximation of around 10 minutes is okay. So if you say question 1 will take between 5 to 15 minutes, that is perfectly fine. We don't expect you to have a perfectly timed tutorial, but just for you to be able to keep in mind the time frame that you're working with is a great thing to do. Now, another important thing you need to do before class is to actually know that you will be there. If for any reason you cannot attend as a chair, you should inform your tutor. It is a very big responsibility for somebody to step up chairing out of nowhere, so it would be good for them to get a heads up. So if you know beforehand, please tell your tutors, I won't be able to attend. Okay, so now we're actually in the classroom, and early, right? Now, everybody has come, everybody has sat down, your tutor has probably said a few words, and it's your time to speak. What's the first thing you should do? A good starter is to talk a little bit about the readings. It gives you an idea of who has actually done them, but it also allows people to just say some things that are opinions and they're not really factually based. So ask them, hey, did you like the readings? Did you not like them? Was any of them particularly hard? Was any of them particularly easy? Was anything not so interesting? Were there learning goals that you didn't get enough information from the readings, or do you think there was too much information, maybe less reading would be nice? This gives you an opportunity, as I said before, to sort of gauge the room, and also it helps your tutors understand if the readings that have been picked are good enough, and maybe if they need to step up if there's a lack of information into something. That will be very helpful. Now, this is done. Next thing we're doing, we are doing our introductory activities. Now, only if you picked one, of course. If you didn't pick an introductory activity, we go straight into the lesson plan. We're going to talk about this in a second. But if you did pick an introductory activity, let's see how to actually run them. So, we talked about 3 of them. Let's go through. You picked a video, great. Project the video on the smart boards we have. We paid a lot of money for those, so use them. And don't just sit there for 15 minutes, let them watch the video, and then close the video and be like, okay, let's get to the questions. If you have a video, there must be a reason for it to be there. So either pause throughout when something interesting comes up or something important to learning goals comes up and say, hey, this is interesting, it relates to our learning goal. Or at the end say, so does this change your opinion about what you read in this text or that text? Right? That's something you can do with it. But there's the chance that you chose not to have a video. Maybe you chose to have a Kahoot or a quiz or any form of little competition of knowledge. If you did that, great. As we said before, it's a great way to get students to deal with like very fundamental information that doesn't need a lot of critical thought behind it. But even then, take this seriously. Ask them to write down their answers, to remember them, so that when the questions come up that are demanding this type of information, they can immediately relate them. Or during the quiz, before moving to the next question, say, I think we already have some information about question 1. Why doesn't a note taker write it down? Use those opportunities for people to already engage with the material and learn, and not simply as a fun 15-minute game for people to relax. It can be both. The final introductory activity that we introduced was groups. Now, we talked quite extensively about them in the previous video, so just a reminder, if you do groups, please do them with purpose. Give the groups a specific question to talk about, a specific theme to talk about, or even maybe a specific text to talk about. Don't just tell them go into groups. Students tend to just talk about their day or how their weekend was, or maybe some interesting spicy trouble they have with their boyfriends and girlfriends. Instead of doing that, tell them, hey, please talk about something that is relevant to the class. And when you come out of it, have some answers to the questions that we have. So, we're done with the introduction, or we didn't have one at all. And now we are going into our main lesson plan. By this moment, you should be really prepared to do this because hopefully you did all the things we said you do last time. So, in front of us, we have a lesson plan with learning goals and questions. Dive in, start with the first one. Ask the first question and see where the conversation goes. As we said before, let the conversation flow and just mark the questions that are being answered. If the questions are not being answered, then it is your place to step in and maybe ask another question or try to rephrase the question that is currently being asked. Now, let's talk specifically about questions being answered. What tends to happen a lot of times is that a student will be asked a question, and then that question is being answered in a very mechanical, straightforward, and quoted way from the text. When this happens, there's this tendency to say, hey, the question has been answered, let's move forward. In some cases, that is true, because the answer might be a 2 or 3 word answer. For example, let's go back to our friend, the Industrial Revolution. How many phases there were? They were 3. Good. But we need to ask more things. What were those phases? When did they happen? What technologies were there? Your lesson plan will help you with this. But sometimes the answers might need to be a little more complex. So maybe what does a specific philosopher think about morality or a specific action? And saying it was good or it was bad is not really a clear answer. And when you actually read from the text might be quite hard and people don't really understand it. But students have the tendency to think that if something comes from the text, it's great and correct and feel that the question has been answered so they can move on. So in order to avoid this, what you can and should do is always say to people that quoted the text, thank you very much. Does anybody else want to rephrase this in their own word? Or maybe even the same person that said this. In that way, you encourage students and force them to actually understand the material in a way that makes sense to them, instead of simply saying, I read the text, thus I know it. One of the most terrifying things for chairs and tutors, trust me, is silence. There's this fear that if silence is happening in your classroom, nothing is moving forward, nobody's learning anything. And this is partially true, but you have to be cognizant about the types of silences that are happening. When you ask a question, if there's a silence of like 10 or 15 seconds, that is okay. People need time to put their thoughts together, look at their notes, and try to construct the answer to the question that you have asked. If there's a silence of maybe a minute or 30 seconds, maybe you should start to worry. What do we do then when there's a silence? We go back to our questions. Ask the question again. Rephrase it. If you see that still the question is not being answered, there's still methods to go about it. What can you do? Well, if you remember, I asked you to annotate the pages of where you find all your notes. Please go to that annotation, find the page, and since you know what the answer you want is, ask the students, hey, let's open page 21. Let's look at paragraph 3. It talks about the phases of the Industrial Revolution. What can we know about the different types of technologies that existed in these phases? This gives them a moment to re-engage with the text and will eventually produce an answer for you. Now, remember, when you do that, don't simply ask them, read page 21. Find a paragraph, a short page. Don't ask them to read entire texts. It might be daunting and it might take a lot of time. So, while returning to the text is a good idea, don't make classes reading sections. Finally, another way to break silences is very different and kind of psychological. Sometimes silences happen for very different reasons other than the lack of knowledge. They happen because people are shy, afraid, or they think that they are not as prepared as everybody else and it makes them feel insecure. You have a position of power as a chair. You are the person that knows the most, in theory at least. So putting yourself out there and saying, hey, I read this quote and I didn't really understand it. Or even though I tried really hard, this question still remains a bit unanswered to me. Did anybody find something? Puts you in a vulnerable position and immediately allows everybody else to be vulnerable and say, oh, I didn't understand it. Or to realize, oh, if the chair doesn't know this, then maybe if I say this and it's wrong, it's not a problem. So please, remember, communicate, be empathetic, and always look at your bag of tricks that we've gave you to find solutions to the silences that you encounter. But don't be afraid of silences. Be afraid of protracted, unproductive silences. So, We have defeated the terrible silences, we have had a great conversation, and you look at your lesson plan and all your little questions under the learning goal are ticked. That means your learning goal is done. Something you can do at the end of a learning goal that is very nice is to ask the student to summarize. Don't point at somebody, say, hey, would anybody like to summarize then what we learned about this learning goal? If you feel that nobody's comfortable, this is a great opportunity for you to shine. You have all the information, you have all the questions, so maybe you can pick all the things that your friend said and make the summary yourself. This allows everybody to sort of understand the overall topic of the learning goal and, moving forward, allows them to connect learning goals with one another. Because if we know what the learning goal was trying to tell us, the story, then it's easier to create the wider story between the learning goals. And when I'm doing learning goal 3 and something that was important in learning goal 1 comes up, I can say, see, what we learned in learning goal 1 fits in the conversation that we have in learning goal 3. So by now, we should be approaching the end of our post-discussion. We have gone through our learning goals, and if everything has gone all right, we should have done about an hour, 20 minutes of class thus far, which is a great amount of time to have a post-discussion. Now, if your post-discussions are a bit over that, don't panic, it happens, trust, it happens a lot. But you might find yourself to be a little behind that. Maybe you were there for 45 minutes, 50 minutes. So what do you do then? Well, there's some options that you have to close a classroom with. The easiest thing you can do to close a classroom is to summarize. Much like you do with each of the learning goals, you can then summarize the entire story that we've been trying to tell. My colleague last time talked about AI and regulation. So imagine you're in the AI class and the story started with the first learning goal, what is AI, how people use it. Then it moved to who produces AI, and then it moved to how AI is regulated. Then the story seems to be that AI is a fact of life that exists. At some point, there's a definite choices that made about how it is produced and what its content is, and that affects how people use it. And because of that use, there comes questions of ethics and regulation, which then maybe opens a very interesting conversation about to what extent should we regulate it. So you can make the summary, create the story, and then at the end, because we're in the humanities and nothing is really solid, you can find an interesting conversation to have, which leads us to the second thing you could do at the end of your discussion, which is have a conversation, a debate. You can break your class into different sides of a debate that you found. For example, should or should we not regulate AI and stifle innovation? Or maybe instead of breaking them into groups, go around the class, say, what do you guys believe? What do you believe? What do you believe? What do you believe? If you point people, make sure to point at everybody so nobody feels singled out. Debates are really nice because they add a personal perspective to the topics that we talk about and make people engage a bit more personally and deeper with the objects, not simply as cold object of science, but something that it's theirs and they have opinions about. Finally, speaking of personalizing topics, the final option you have for closing a class is to try to relate the topics we're talking about to sort of your everyday life or the real life of people in this classroom. For some things, this is quite easy. AI, for example, it's everywhere. Somebody can type in a web page, find an AI model, and talk with it. But some other topics we're going to be talking about in this university might be significantly more obscure. For example, you might be talking about philosophy and ethics. So it would be nice to ask, hey, this philosopher says this about morality, this about how to live the good life. Do you guys find this in your everyday life? Have you acted in that way and have you find it to be fulfilling or not? Or maybe you're talking about EU regulation, about fishing. Well, this doesn't affect everybody's life, but maybe somebody here fishes, or they have family that fishes, or they go in an island for the summer and they see fishermen there and their life. How does this regulation might affect the life of those fishermen? Think about it. Try to create real experiments in your mind with case studies from the real world, your everyday life, the news that you read, the politics that you engage with, to relate the topics that we talk with reality. So, we're done with the post-discussion. Congratulations. You can take a breath, relax, it is all over. You will only have to do it for the rest of the periods. I'm joking. You will, but it'll be fine. You have all the tools you need now. Now, remember, as a final point of advice, you always have teammates when you do this. The other students don't want to see you fail because they'll be in your position and because they're not bad people. I hope. But most importantly, the tutor is there to help. Communicate with them. Do you have ideas that you're not sure will work out before your discussions? Go to them, talk about it. Tell them, hey, I want to do a Kahoot, I want to do a video. Or I'm thinking of restructuring the learning goals like this. Do you think it would work? They will give you advice and they will help you out. Even in class, if you find yourself stuck, look at them, ask them, hey, it seems that nobody can really answer this. Could you help us do it? And they will do. And with this, we'll come to the final close of our video series. Thank you so very much for watching all three of them. Watch all three of them, they're important. And if you ever need a refresher, please come back. There's never shame into looking back and getting refreshed on things that you have to do consistently. From us, thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you in class.